Hey friends, Christine Moore here. Thanks for checking out this video. Today is day 57 of the 77-day video challenge. And in today's video, I'm going to be sharing part 2 of my story. And I shared part 1 a few days ago. And so let me just get something on my phone here. There we go. Okay. So I did part 1 a couple days ago. What I'm going to be doing over the next, I don't know, maybe 5 to 7 days is I'm going to be sharing my story in small increments. And I'm going to be diving a little bit deeper into my story because typically I just share kind of like my addiction story, but there's a lot more to my story, and so that's what I'm going to be doing. So in part 1, the other day, I shared about my childhood from like literally the day that I was born up to the age of 13. And so what I talked about in my childhood is I had a really, really good childhood. Very fond memories. My mom raised me to know the Lord, to have a relationship with Jesus Christ, and I was an athlete. I had a lot of structure, discipline growing up. I was in track and field, I was in ballet, I was in gymnastics, and I didn't mention this in my last video, but my gymnastics coaches were the best. I owe so much to them because of just they poured into my life where my parents could not, and they always were encouraging me, pushing me because they believed in me. They saw so much potential, and so they were drawing that out of me between the ages of 10 to 13. So yeah, great childhood. Another thing I forgot to mention is that I was very quiet, very quiet. I internalized a lot of things, and so I was very shy and an introvert. And I still am to this day. I do like to spend a lot of time by myself and just processing and getting filled up. That's just how I am naturally. A lot of people are like, there's no way you're an introvert with all your speaking that you do. And I'm like, no, really I am naturally. So let me just, I'm going to do part 2 now. I'm going to try to make this quick because I do have to get to my son's baseball tournament. It is Strikeout Breast Cancer Day or tournament, because October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. All right, so age 13 is really where everything changed. Went from an amazing childhood to now facing a lot of difficult times. Being a teenager is just, those are tough years. Figuring out who you are and all of that. Okay, so at age 13, when I was going into 8th grade, I was in a private school my whole life from kindergarten to up to 8th grade. And so when I was about to start 8th grade, the private school that I was in, they shut down. And so my mom ended up putting me in homeschool. And at that time, my dad and his job, they ended up getting moved to Houston, Texas. And I was living in Dallas. And that's where I was born and raised. And so at that time, my dad, he had to commute. So he was gone pretty much Monday through Friday and only home on the weekends. And then my mom, during that time, decided to go back to school to get her master's degree. So what happens when both parents are gone? There's no direction. I had no direction. No one there to guide me, to tell me to, just give me that guidance that I needed, and also the discipline and the structure that I needed. So I went from being super, super disciplined and structured to now, okay, you're in homeschool, here's some textbooks, go do it, and that's it. And then my mom ended up moving me from the gym where I was thriving and had my amazing coaches that I talked about. And she moved me because I was no longer in that private school, which was next door to the gym, and it was a far drive. So at that time she decided to move me from that gym to a gym that was just down the street from our house. So, and we've had this conversation looking back. She's like, that was one of the biggest mistakes that I made as a parent, was taking you from a place where you were thriving and doing so well, and then just putting you into this place where it was all brand new, and they definitely did not have the coaches that I was used to. Just a different environment, and I just felt like I did not belong. So that all took place in 8th grade, okay? And then 9th grade, so high school, and so my mom decided to put me into public high school because it was in the neighborhood. My brother had gone there, my sister had gone there, and so it just felt natural to put me in there. Now, I was extremely naive. Again, I was in a small private school, and my parents never talked to me about, issues that we should talk to our kids about to prepare them for the real world. And so I went in there completely naive, didn't know a thing, didn't know a soul. I was brand new. And so, so I started high school, and going from maybe 8 to 10 kids in a classroom to now 30 plus kids in a classroom was overwhelming, to say the least. And so at this time, I started puberty. Boys were starting to notice me. I wasn't getting any attention from my father. He was always gone. And so, naturally, when boys were giving me attention, it made me feel special. And, I didn't know that they had other intentions. I just thought they were being nice. I mean, that's how naive I was. So really, honestly, just big picture, high school, I was trying to find where I fit in. I was trying to find where I would be accepted, where I would just have that just feeling of belonging. Now, because I was so quiet and shy, other people took it as, oh, this girl's a snob. She thinks she's too good for anybody. And that was not the case at all. I had very low self-esteem. I was not confident, and I ended up quitting gymnastics, which was, that was my goal between 10 and 13, when I was at the gym where I was thriving. My goal was to be on a trajectory to go to college, to get a scholarship, and I actually wanted to become a meteorologist. That was the dream. Those were the goals I had when I was that age. And so then going into high school, I ended up quitting gymnastics because the coaches I didn't get along with them. And because I didn't have that guidance and direction, I ended up quitting and just losing the passion that I had for the sport. So going into 10th grade, I was a gymnast and a ballet dancer growing up, so I thought, well, maybe trying out for the varsity drill team would be a good fit because I have the talent, and that way I can get involved, make some more friends, and hopefully enjoy my high school years. And so, hang on one second. So at this time, going into my sophomore year, my dad was always gone. My mom was in school, like she was back in college getting her master's, and to be honest, she was checked out. You know, she couldn't discipline me, and I was rebellious, and so really, honestly, it's like we were just surviving that type of thing. And so my sophomore year is when I decided to try out for the varsity drill team. Now, back then, this school, like their drill team, had an incredible reputation. The drill team over the past years had won so many awards. You had to be really, really good to be able to make the varsity drill team. And so it was a big deal. Okay. The tryout process was like several weeks long. It was very intense, just a lot involved, and again, a huge deal. The last day of the tryout process is when we found out who was going to make the varsity drill team. And I'll never forget that day. You know, we had gone through the whole process, the judges, everything. And so they took us into the dressing room to wait for the results. And I'll never forget looking out the door there was a dressing room and you could go out to the parking lot. And I remember looking out the window and seeing moms and dads and grandparents and friends and neighbors, and they were all there waiting, you know, to hear the results. And, you know, they had roses and flowers and balloons, and you know, everybody was there because they were going to celebrate, right? And I was looking, and nobody from my family was there. And so we were sitting there waiting to hear the results, and all of a sudden they started calling out names, and just all I could hear was just like screaming and crying and yelling, and, you know, like people who were either really, really happy or people who found out that they didn't make it, and they were so just so upset. And so I heard my name. I made the team. And I went out into the gymnasium, and all the parents had come in, and they were all just, you know, hugging their kids and congratulating everybody. But there was nobody there for me. Nobody. I don't know if you've ever had a situation like that, but it's pretty devastating. And so here I ended up making this amazing team, and there was nobody there. And so I remember getting a ride home with one of my friends, and they dropped me off. My dad was out mowing the lawn. My mom was sitting in her recliner watching TV, just relaxing. I guess they didn't understand. I don't know why they weren't there. And I remember going into my room and just sitting down on the floor and just getting a stuffed animal and just crying. And that basically sums up how I felt pretty much my entire high school career. I did have some good times, some hard times, and all in between. But big picture, you know, looking back, just high school was very difficult for me. And I didn't have guidance. I didn't have direction. I didn't have discipline. And so it was just really all about searching, trying to find out who I was, where did I belong, where did I fit in. And yeah, I struggled academically. I barely graduated, barely. I do have a brother and sister. However, my relationships with them were not close at all. My brother he's much older than me, like 12, 13 years older. So I just remember growing up, he was always in and out of the house. Like whenever he would go broke, he would come back home for a while and then he'd get a job, go back out. It was just in and out. And then my sister basically, locked herself in a room, and I rarely ever talked to her. So, just didn't have really any support from family, anything like that. And then my senior year was when I had my first serious relationship, and unfortunately, it was with someone who had zero ambition in life. This person just smoked weed all day long, every day, didn't have a job, just hung out with friends who did the same thing. And I was so naive when I got into this relationship, because I thought, oh, I'm a Christian and I can help him and I can save him and I can help him, get his life together. Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way. And so that the whole 2-3 years that we were together, it was terrible. He was extremely abusive, and I just got hurt over and over and over. He cheated on me. I mean, all of that. And so one day I finally, I don't know, it was 2 or 3 years that I dated him. And one day I just finally woke up and I was like, I'm done. I've had enough. I can't change him. I am moving on. So pretty much from the ages of 18 to 20, I was lost. I really was. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to say this. And once I got into high school, I stopped going to church. I stopped going to youth group. And so, I walked away from my faith pretty much. And from 18 to 20, I was partying a lot, going to clubs, and I experimented with marijuana, experimented with alcohol, had many times where I got very, very sick from drinking too much, learned some hard lessons there. But it's interesting, I never ever did hard drugs. I had heard about them, and in my childhood, I always remember the commercial, "This is your brain on drugs." They had the frying pan with the egg in it, and so I never wanted to try hard drugs. I just never did, and I knew that it could kill me, but nobody ever told me about the dangers of prescription drugs. So in 1998 is when I finally said goodbye to Dallas and my life there, and I ended up moving to Austin, Texas, where I was going to have a fresh start. So I'm going to stop there. Tomorrow will be part 3, and I'm going to get into how life definitely changed for me, and I'll be moving into how I met my husband, and then how I tried my very first prescription pain pill and where that led to. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Again, I'll be moving to part 3 tomorrow. And so yeah, let's see, what else was I gonna say? No, that's it for now. So again, October is, what is it? It's the National Medicine Abuse Awareness Month. And so I will put a link in the comments. Check that out. Feel free to share this out with anyone who you think might benefit from it, who has struggled with addiction or is struggling with addiction, and wants to hear kind of the whole story. So anyways, have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you tomorrow.